Hey everyone, on today's episode of Huber Syndrome, we're talking about horror games. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. It's not October yet, but that doesn't mean we can't play some spooky games. So I went back, caught up on a few, and I got some more on the horizon that I'm gonna play, some that aren't even out yet, so let's dive right in.
It sure is dark in here.
Yes, and there's a good reason for it. But you can light the lamp now if you wish.
First up, I want to talk about the one, the only, the great Amnesia. So I played Amnesia pretty close to when it came out, but I didn't do it right. I played in not ideal circumstances, you know, sometimes the lights were on, sometimes I would play for 10 minutes at a time. It just wasn't ideal. I didn't give it the respect that it deserved, and you know how I am with my gaming conditions, you know? Pull the shades, turn all the lights off, turn the phone off, get in the zone. So I went back recently and I went through Amnesia, and it is just so freaking intense. I cannot stress enough how exhausting this game is to play for many reasons. The atmosphere never lets up. It's just so foreboding and oppressing. The music, just the environments, the menacing monsters that could be lurking around every corner, and most importantly, the resource management. Your main source of light in the game is the lantern and flint that you can use to light candles, and those supplies are pretty limited, especially early on. So a bunch of the time you have to kind of wander around in the dark, but when you're wandering around in the dark, your character starts going insane and the screen gets all blurry. It's just absolutely a must play for fans of horror. I urge you, if you haven't had the chance to play it now. It's part of the Amnesia collection, which is going to lead us to the next game on the list, A Machine for Pigs. But The Dark Descent still holds up 10 years later, and the main reason is the atmosphere. It is just relentless. If you play in the darkness, you will feel it. So the first Amnesia was from Frictional Games, but the second one was actually from the Chinese Room. They did Dear Esther and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Now, I had never played A Machine for Pigs, but I just did so recently on that Amnesia collection that I mentioned. And it's a good game, but it's not great. It doesn't even come close to the highs of The Dark Descent. One of the main reasons is because there's no resource management whatsoever. Your lantern has unlimited light, which is convenient, but it also takes away a lot of the tension, especially when you're in the dark areas, because you can just shine your lantern over there and be fine. There's also just not a lot of puzzles. Some of the puzzles in the original game you had to do under pressure, and you had to figure it out, and just being in the environment of The Dark Descent was so intense, let alone having to solve a puzzle. But A Machine for Pigs is just very much on rails. You're never really confused about where to go, which again is nice for convenience and a lot less stressful. But when it's a horror game, I love the stress. I crave the tension. And A Machine for Pigs just doesn't really have that. And then the enemies themselves, the mutilated pig monsters, just aren't that intimidating. And they're really easy to avoid and get around. I think I just died once or twice on my playthrough. It's a lot shorter than the first one, just a few hours, but I'm still glad I played it, just not as good as the original. Now those are some games that I caught up on, Amnesia basically, which brings us to the return of Frictional Games, the studio behind The Dark Descent, Soma. The Dark Descent came out in 2010, and it took them 5 years to release Soma, which came out in 2015. Now, one of my favorite things to do when I bring up Soma is to throw Brandon Jones straight under the bus, because he reviewed this back at Game Trailers, and he gave it a 7.8. Now, I don't know if many of you remember the 7.8 meme, but it's a pretty funny one. And that, combined with Brandon Jones's repeated, "Yeah, it's okay," steered me away from Soma. I was so hyped on it, and Brandon Jones de-hyped me. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain just came out a few weeks before, so I was busy with that. Obviously, Phantom Pain Mania was palpable. And then a few weeks after that was the Uncharted collection, which was all 3 Uncharted games remastered, so that took a lot of my time. Next thing you know, Soma was put in the back burner, and I never played it through. Over the years, there have been some trusty allies that have repeatedly asked me to play Soma, incessantly, if you will, but now is the time, after revisiting Amnesia, and with the upcoming Amnesia Rebirth also being frictional games. Pause for a syndrome really quick. I love directors' filmographies and video game studios' gameographies. That kind of kickstarted this whole thing, actually. With Frictional Games' upcoming return to Amnesia with Amnesia Rebirth, you know, I haven't played their original trilogy, Penumbra, but I did want to go and play their most recent games. So Soma is on my list. I don't know if I'm going to play it immediately or maybe save it for my October fair, depending on how busy I get. But I am 100% playing it. It is top of the queue, Soma.
If you're a fan of frictional games, you'll find Soma equally spooky and thought-provoking.
And then the last game on the queue is Layers of Fear 2. I absolutely loved the original Layers of Fear. It kind of came out of nowhere, and my favorite thing about it, it's a haunted house game, which immediately I love, but the way the environments change around you, that game has you second guessing yourself all the time. Did I see it? Did I not see that? Where am I going? What is going on? Will be uttered in your brain constantly. But then Layers of Fear 2 came out, and it was pretty divisive. I remember some pretty poor reviews out there. Again, word of mouth just kind of killing it for me. I was busy at the time with other games, of course. You know, there's so many. There's unlimited good video games, so it's hard to play them all. But Layers of Fear 2, the premise is pretty awesome. You are an actor going to shoot a film on a ship, and crazy things start happening. And I'm kind of hoping that it's all just an elaborate troll to film the greatest horror movie of all time. That would be pretty funny. But Layers of Fear 2, also with Soma, top of the queue. And speaking of studios' gameographies, Layers of Fear was from Bloober Team, which then went on to do Observer, which Ian and I played on Easy Update. Whoa, we played a minigame, dude! Whoa! Really hyped for that Redux. I never finished Observer, so I'm definitely holding off for the Redux coming out later this year. And then they did Layers of Fear 2 and the Blair Witch, but most importantly, which also kickstarted this whole catching up on horror operation, they're doing The Medium. The Medium is easily one of my most anticipated games of 2020. You play as Marianne, a medium who can travel into the spirit world. It does like a Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons camera thing where you're in both worlds simultaneously solving puzzles. She can use her psychic abilities Carrie style to take out enemies. And if things couldn't get hyped enough, there's fixed camera angles, which you know I'm obsessed with. And Akira Yamaoka of Silent Hill fame is co-scoring the soundtrack. The Medium, shaping up to be one of the best horror games of 2020. Fingers crossed.
Doesn't she know? Everyone and everything. It all ends in me.
So that's it for the episode. Those are some horror games that I just played, plan on playing in the near future, and plan on playing when they release later this year. We are Easy Allies. I am at Michael P. Huber. We will be back here next week, and until then, love and respect.